Hi.
Good afternoon, Charlotte.
Hi, good afternoon.
How are you?
I am great. How are you doing? How's the weather up there?
Well, so far so good, but as you know, I'm in the Washington, Annapolis metro area.
Right.
Y'all might be in store for a hurricane.
All the time until November. So yeah, we're under a flash flood watch actually right now until Tuesday. And then yeah, the tropical depression's out there.
Wow. So you're coming to us from
Moss Point, Mississippi.
my hometown, near and dear to my heart.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us. As I mentioned on the previous conversation with the Clarks, my company, Allies for Justice, launched this Crucial Conversations as part of the FAME. We facilitate, we advocate, we mediate, and we educate.
Awesome.
So this is part of the facilitate. We want to facilitate honest, sincere dialogue.
Okay.
So we call it Crucial Conversations in Black and White. And for those who are viewing this has not been rehearsed. Charlotte and I are just jumping right into the fire, and I'm so tickled. Please tell me, Charlotte, some ways that I can be a better ally. And you can frame it however you want. Just speak from your heart.
Some ways that you could be a better ally. Well, definitely this. Definitely the conversation. You know, everything starts with the conversation. And if anyone is confused, if anyone doesn't understand, if anyone is afraid, just with anything else in this world, ask. You know, when you go to Walmart and they're out of something, what do? You ask. When you're at work and you don't understand something, what do? You ask. This is nothing different. This is nothing different. And we are all just as confused and baffled as anybody else. We're just as confused too. We don't understand why this is happening to us as a collective people. We don't understand either. So, you know, I would say to anybody that is interested in being an ally and that wants to understand and is confused or baffled or any of those adjectives, or even if they aren't baffled, if they just want to help, just ask, just have a conversation.
I fully agree with that. And I think what I'm going to practice is, this just came to me like a month ago. What am I missing? Help me. What am I missing? Like, that's a good way maybe to start.
Right. And my niece, it's so funny. My eldest niece, I'll never forget this. She was here for a short period of time when she lived here after she graduated from college. And she was somewhere, I forget where she was, but she was somewhere, and an older gentleman, you know, started a conversation with her, and some kind of way they got around to what are you doing, and she responded that I am a graduate student. I just graduated, and I got my degree in engineering. And he in turn said, "Oh, which one did you go to, Alcorn or Jackson State?" She said Mississippi State. And she was so confused and baffled. Why did he only give me those two options? Why wouldn't he think I said, "Erica, you said an older gentleman." When he was younger and probably all the way up until his early, he only knew that African Americans could only attend 2 colleges. He wasn't trying to be mean or disrespectful or any of that. He just didn't know. It was a teachable moment. And that's across the board. That's with all of us. And that's just a prime example that it's not just about race. That's a teachable moment to somebody who didn't conceive that now these kids can go anywhere they want.
And that was a great way to frame it for her, so she didn't take it too much to heart, or could be prepared if it were to happen again.
Right.
Because I fully agree,
Exactly.
there's a generational aspect. My mom is 90, almost 91, and her
She
frame of
looks
reference,
fabulous.
oh, because she scrubs her face so hard. But the way she thinks is a whole separate way, and you know, I have to be tolerant with her because
Sure.
that's how but it's hard, you know, it can be hard sometimes.
And we have to remember that across the board, there are things that people don't understand that have absolutely nothing to do with race. It may be a generational gap. It may be, you know, the whole social media thing.
Exactly. So the first tip you gave us was to ask, right? And then I feel like through the story with your niece, what would be a tip we could get from that? Maybe consider,
Yeah.
Think
Yeah.
before you speak.
Yeah, right. Realize what your audience is. You know, who's your audience? So if you're gonna have a conversation about anything, consider your audience. You know, are you talking to kids? Are you talking to young adults? Are you talking to the elderly? Are you talking to the community? Are you talking to the pastors? Consider your audience. And that's that's very important, because nobody wants to ask a question and come off offensive. And now this person's like, whoa.
Right.
You know.
Right.
Excuse
Then you
me?
close the door.
And then you close the door, and then you got a problem. And now this person will never ask again. This person felt offended, and it's just a mess. You know, I think if you are genuine, you know, you approach it genuinely, I don't think there can ever be an issue. So if I genuinely say to you, you know, Rhonda, I really want to know XYZ. I think at that point, now we have an opportunity to have some open dialogue and honest dialogue. Honest.
That is a great point. Honest dialogue is the key. And you know, sometimes these spaces they can be hard to get into.
Mm-hmm.
They can be uncomfortable. They may be hard and uncomfortable, but they're always courageous.
Right. Right.
So
they're very uncomfortable. I've had some very uncomfortable conversations. And but I think, just like you said, if you're interested in becoming an ally, or if you're just interested in trying to see how this can somehow, you know, come to a head, come to a halt, then you have to take that first step. I mean, there's no other way around it.
Okay, so those were 2 tips. Did you have any more you wanted to share?
You know, it may be sometimes, well, definitely it's easier to talk to somebody that you know. So, you know, if you have a coworker that you're chummy with, or a church member, you know, you may want to start with them instead of just approaching, you know, a random person, so to speak. You know, maybe even a group, you know, a group conversation. That way you don't feel like it's just me, you know, by myself. If you have that type of personality, everybody's not like that. Some people can, you know, they have no problem with approaching, you know, someone. But if you feel that way, and if you feel that this is kind of like, oh, this kind of touchy subject, or, you know, maybe if you're in a group, you know, and have that conversation, or, you know, enlist other people to be a part of that group and have those types of conversations. I really and truly think the church, and I'm not gonna bash the church. I'm a deacon.
Okay, Deacon Bardwell.
I'm a deacon and a Christian, but I do think that the church can assist a whole lot in this, because most of us, when we're in church, our walls are down. You know, we're kind of vulnerable. You know, the walls are down, and you know, we know this isn't a place where you can get all rowdy and, you know, loud. You're in church. So I think that the church is a perfect place to have these hard conversations. and it can be felicitated by anybody, by
Right.
anybody. It
Right.
doesn't
You
have
don't
to
have to have a title. Right.
right. It doesn't have, I'm not saying the pastor should get up there and start these. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying inside the church, in a room or in the fellowship hall or wherever, picnic on the ground since we're social distancing. And anybody can, start that and just invite people. And once you're there, just, have a conversation.
I think that's a wonderful idea. I really do. The sometimes there's safety in a group, or you feel a little more of a support. Whereas
Exactly.
me, I tend to just love to dive right in.
Right.
But that's not everybody.
That's not everybody.
But that is not everybody's personality.
Right.
And I appreciate that thought. I had someone ask me for a recommendation for a book because she had just had an awakening with regard to not believing that racism still existed as a Caucasian. And she genuinely thought that. She was my age, and she was brought to tears because her eyes were open and she started seeing it.
Right.
So she asked me for a book recommendation for her book club. And I was very, very honored to be able to share a recommendation for her, and appreciated the work that hopefully they put into reading it together. And the back of the book gave some ideas. And
right.
But the thing about church, I guess, if the church is integrated, right? Because you're talking about having the conversation in a group of blacks and whites, right?
Correct. Well,
first of all, you got to make sure your church is right.
Not necessarily. You can just have an open invite. You can. You can certainly.
Invite anybody. Okay.
Right. But you can certainly start with your own congregation, but then within the congregation, you can say, invite. If you want to invite a friend or invite your, anyone, a worker, and come to this quote unquote unofficial town meeting type of setting, and just like I said, and have somebody start it. There doesn't have to be one person necessarily in charge. It could be kind of like the book club. Everybody's around and everybody's talking, and everybody's contributing to that conversation and asking questions. And you could even do something like they could write down the question and put it in a box anonymously or something.
Right.
Anything to get this conversation started and get this openness started, because I just honestly feel, and I've had conversations with people and they'll say things and I'll even go, really? But it's so much inside of us that we're not talking about, we're not sharing, we're not bringing to the forefront. And I'm 95% sure it's all because it stems from fear. It stems from fear of what you're going to think about me. What's going to happen once I say it? Are you going to go off on me? How's it going to be perceived? Whatever. So, but it needs to be in a safe place and with a person that you feel safe with. And it's just so much information that's being shared when you're honest. That's it. And it's not even about blame. Oh, well, I had somebody tell me that they went to a non-integrated school, a segregated school, and they never, in their town, they never really saw Black people. They never interacted with Black people. That's not their fault. That doesn't mean you're racist because you were in a segregated school. That's not what that means. That means you went to a segregated school. I don't know if the law said that school couldn't be segregated or if they just chose not to go there. But either way, that's not your fault. But I think people internalize those types of things and think, oh, well, this must mean I'm racist now because I never had a Black friend. Or this must mean I'm racist because I don't know what BLM means. That's not what that means. And I don't know anybody that feels that way, that, oh, because you don't know that, you're racist or you're a bad person. I don't know anybody that thinks that way. But I think as a whole, and seeing stuff on TV and Facebook and all the other social media outlets, people tend to think if they have not been involved in some type of multicultural thing that they're racist. You know what I mean? Or other people think that they're racist. And that's just not true.
That's a great point that I probably hadn't even considered. And I think so much of that speaks to fear. I think you hit the nail on the head. We fear what we're uncomfortable with, what we don't understand, what we don't know.
Yes.
I mean, hey, I grew up segregated, believe it or not.
Mm-hmm.
My church was segregated. I mean,
I was too.
They didn't say it. Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So when you understand that Charlotte bleeds red, I bleed red, we all bleed red. Doesn't matter if we played together as kids, we can sit at the table and have an honest conversation.
Right.
And I love it, and I appreciate that you did it. The other thing I wanted to mention with regard to the fear is when I spoke previously to Mark and Annette, Mark brought up in some line of his that we want to aim for perpetual healing. And I grabbed onto that. I want that to be my hashtag. Hashtag perpetual healing.
That's good.
It is good. And there are systems that need to be fixed and dealt with. And I work toward that regularly. But I want to commit to perpetual healing. And that goes both ways.
Mm-hmm. Right. Because we will, you absolutely can't undo the past. You can't make it go away. It's there. But it becomes, the past ends up becoming a very real part of the present when the past issues are still not fixed. Sure, we're not walking around being beaten and in chains anymore and working the cotton fields. However, we're still dealing with slave-like issues. We're still being criticized for our hair, fired because we choose to wear dreadlocks or braids, killed disproportionately by the police. Those are the types of things that make most people think about the past, and now you're incorporating the past in the present, and now you just got this whole thing, and by no means do we not have any issues right now. Absolutely. Right. But those issues were those issues, these issues are these issues, and it's really, really, really hard to not bring the two together and say, well, this looks just like that. This looks just like that. So obviously this is like that. It's hard to do that. It should be done, but it's hard. It's really, really hard. And I think a lot of the times too, when people are saying stuff like, slavery still exists, and we never got over that, and all this kind of stuff. I think people are confused, like, well, I mean, y'all ain't slaves, y'all y'all got houses and cars and jobs, and what are you talking about? But it's a metaphor. You know what I mean? It's a metaphor, and it's a thing. I am only the 1, 2, 3, third generation free.
Right.
That's all.
Right.
So it's not like I'm the 20th or the 50th. There's only 3 generations, and I have a picture of my great grandmother on my wall that was a slave. And so, although I didn't live it, I was told stories, I was told things. And of course, my mother lived through the 60s. So, that they had that whole thing. And then, so now there's this. So it's almost like there was never a time of that perpetual healing. There was never a time to heal. Right. And then, okay, now
Right.
Now something new's happened. There was never a time. So it's just like a string of continuous events, and right at maybe like right at the time we thought, okay, we're being accepted by society, we're in the workforce, we're making the same amount of money, and bam. So I don't have the answers. Lord knows I don't have the answers, because if I did, but I do know that it has to start with everyone talking, from the police, from the police need to be there. The community, the leaders need to be there. White people need to be there. Black people need to be there. Asian people need to be there. Because let's face it, even though racism, when you think about it, for the most part, the majority of the people, when they think about it, they think white versus black. That ain't the only racism going on. So let's get that out there. You're
Right.
Women
Right.
are have suffered through racism. The Latina community, the Asian community, the Indian community, they're always looked upon as being a terrorist immediately.
Right.
So it's not just us.
Right.
LGBTQ.
Right.
It's a broad spectrum.
But that all starts with a conversation. I go to school with several East or Indians who, and just hearing them share their story everywhere I go, people sort of back up. So now that I know someone who has felt that and shared that with me, makes all the difference. So in closing, I want to say that, sometimes we tend to think, oh, it's too much. I can't, or we look at the broader issues, and I tend to feel overwhelmed. But I believe so strongly, if everybody started in their world, in your circle, if everybody reached out to one person, think of what a difference that would make, and just say, what am I missing?
Right.
Help me understand. How can I be a better ally? I use that term because that's the name of my company. And I love the thought and the word picture, but however you want to frame it. If you reach out to one person, each one reach one, what a difference. I believe the ripple effect would be strong. So I'm grateful that you shared. The first tip was ask. The second one with regard to your niece was, I can't remember.
Just realize that everything is a teachable moment, and it's not just, it's across the board. It could be generational,
right,
or anything.
Right. And then the third one was, well, I don't know if this was the third one I want to pull out, is fear. The way to overcome the fear is to sit at the table with someone. Take somebody out for Starbucks. Try to facilitate a group at your church. Right. There are endless possibilities. And I remember when I went to Lighthouse in Moss Point, some of the best years of my life. And Bishop Brown would always say, hug somebody and tell them you love them. It's real simple. Well, we can't do it right now because we're in a pandemic. 2020. But fist bump somebody.
How about?
I love them. Yes. So I really appreciate your time. And if anybody's interested in joining us on a future conversation, inbox me, inbox Charlotte, and we'll have another discussion, another roundtable. You can submit questions anonymously. I think that was a great idea.
That's a great idea. Yeah.
It is, because sometimes it's hard. Like I said, these are hard. These crucial conversations are hard, but they're courageous. I want to emphasize that. So did you have any closing words?
The only thing that
Deacon
Brown. The only thing that I would close with is, when we're looking at all of this, let's just remember that it could affect any of us. It really could. It could. I'm gonna tell you something. I got an Amber Alert a couple of weeks ago, and the Amber Alert was we know that babies that are missing for a certain amount of time, and all I could think of, and it was a Caucasian baby, but all I could think of was, that mother is losing her mind. She is losing her mind.
Right.
And it didn't matter what race, It didn't matter what age. Those people, human beings are about to lose their minds. Same thing when you look at the fires. Those are people. They're not
Right.
black people, white people, African,
Right.
Asians, they're people. And if you just find that, realize that that could happen to you, any kind of situation, a Amber Alert or a fire or, a hurricane. It's the people. It all comes down to the people. So, if we can just keep that in mind, that all of this that's happening, they're happening to people.
There's a meme or something on Facebook I've seen that says, turn off the news and love your neighbor.
Mm.
I think that's how we're going to close, because the media can get you crazy.
Yeah.
But if you turn it off and you go find somebody face to face, don't tap at them behind the wall of the internet. Turn the media off. All media,
Right.
news,
Absolutely.
social, blah, blah, blah. Find somebody. Find somebody, hug them, and tell them you love them.
Absolutely. I love you.
I love you. Air hug. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope that you'll do it again.
Absolutely. Talk to you soon.
Yeah, stay safe and upcoming Sally.
I will.
All right, bye.
Bye.